Get him out of here! Detective Ryan Mitchell's order cut through the Riverside Police Department briefing room like a blade. He was pointing at the elderly man Chief Sandra Pearson had brought to their serial killer task force meeting. A man in a jacket 2 sizes too big with hands that trembled slightly when he held his coffee. "Ryan," the chief began. "No, Chief. We've got 3 dead bodies, a killer who's accelerating, and the FBI sends us someone who looks like he should be playing checkers in a park, not analyzing crime scenes." The old man stood slowly, carefully, as if his knees hurt. He picked up his weathered briefcase and turned toward the door. Then he stopped. For 5 long seconds, he stared at the evidence board, at the photos of 3 victims, the maps, the timelines, the profile the task force had spent 3 months building. "You're wrong about the age," he said quietly. Mitchell's jaw tightened. "I'm sorry? Your profile says he's in his 40s. He's not." The old man's finger traced an invisible line between 3 crime scene photos. "He's in his early 20s, and he's not working alone. You're looking for 2 killers, not 1. The room exploded in protests, but Dr. Robert Hayes was already walking toward the door. Over his shoulder, he added one more thing, the thing that would haunt Detective Mitchell for the next 48 hours. "And I know this because I trained him." Riverside, Oregon was a small town, located about 40 miles south of Portland along the banks of the Willamette River. It barely reached a population of 40,000. Big crimes didn't happen here: theft, minor drug cases, the occasional drunken brawl. So when the first body was found, everyone thought it was a one-time incident. But then came the second body. Then the third. Detective Ryan Mitchell was 32 years old and had only been in Riverside for 8 months after getting promoted from the Portland Police Department. He was young, ambitious, trained in modern homicide investigation techniques. He had a certificate from the FBI's Behavioral Analysis Program. Crime scene analysis, digital evidence collection, psychological profiling. He was good at all of it. At least, that's what he thought. For 3 months, the task force worked 14-hour days. Mitchell built a profile. The killer was probably a white male in his 40s, lived alone, had poor social skills, likely had a record for minor offenses. Classic serial killer profile. It was straight out of the FBI handbook, but nothing fit. No suspect matched this profile completely. There was no DNA evidence, no witnesses, just 3 bodies. All young women, all found along the Willamette River, all killed during nighttime hours. Chief Pearson was patient, but after the 3rd body, pressure started coming from upper management. The mayor wanted results. The press was all over them. And the chief, as a last resort, had opened an old file. Dr. Robert Hayes, she'd told Mitchell over the phone, retired from the FBI, one of the founders of the Behavioral Analysis Unit, lives in Portland. "Chief, we really don't need. He'll be here tomorrow morning at 9, Ryan. Be nice." And now, here he was. Dr. Robert Hayes in his 70s, gray-haired, brown-eyed, wearing a worn brown jacket and old jeans, sitting in the conference room. The coffee cup in his hand trembled slightly. Early-stage Parkinson's, maybe, or just old age. The moment Mitchell looked at him, he'd thought, "This man can't help us." And now, as the man was walking out, everyone in the room had frozen. "Wait," Chief Pearson said sharply. "Dr. Hayes, please stop." The old man turned around. There was no expression on his face, but there was a tired sadness in his eyes. "What do you mean? You trained him?" the chief asked. Dr. Hayes set his briefcase back on the table and slowly returned. He sat down. He took a sip of coffee. Then he began to speak, and everyone in the room held their breath. "In 1998, Hayes said, the FBI's Behavioral Analysis Unit started a new program. We selected young, talented psychology students and trained them in criminal profiling. We were grooming the agents of the future. I was in charge of that program." He paused. He slowly set his coffee cup on the table. "We had 12 students in the program. All of them were brilliant, but one of them was special. He had an incredible ability to understand the minds of serial killers. He could empathize. He could get inside them. He learned very well." Mitchell leaned forward. "What happened to him?" "He learned too well," Hayes said quietly. "So well that he started asking himself questions. Why do these people do this? Could I do it too? What would it feel like?" Those kinds of questions. The room was filled with an icy silence. "We removed him from the program," Hayes continued, "but it was too late. Because we'd taught him everything: how to clean a crime scene, how to hide evidence, how police think, how the FBI builds profiles. He looked at the photos on the evidence board. And most importantly, we taught him how to kill without getting caught. Mitchell jumped to his feet. That's impossible. If something like that existed in FBI archives, we'd know about it. The files were sealed, Hayes said. The scandal would have been huge. The entire behavioral analysis program could have shut down. I agreed to retire. That person's name was erased from the archives. He raised his head and looked directly into Mitchell's eyes. For 27 years, every single day, I knew that person would come back someday. And now he has. Chief Pearson leaned forward. Dr. Hayes, this is a very serious accusation. If you're wrong, I'm not wrong. Hayes stood up and walked to the evidence board. With his arthritic finger, he touched the photo of the first victim. Sarah Martinez, 23 years old, found on June 15th, by the river, positioned facing east. He moved to the second photo. Emma Thompson, 25 years old, found on July 18th, same location, same position. Third photo. Jessica Park, 22 years old, found on August 20th, again, the same. He turned and looked at the team. Your profile says a lone male, disorganized, impulsive killing. But look, he straightened the three photos. There are exactly 33 days between each murder. 33. This isn't coincidence. This was planned. And this level of organization doesn't come from the type you're looking for. Mitchell was about to object, but Hayes continued. And look at the positioning, Hayes said. They're all facing east. Why? Because he wants you to find the body as the sun rises each morning. The light and shadows display the body at a specific angle. This is aesthetic. This is art. This is a message. What message? Asked a young detective, Sarah Chen. Hayes looked at the photos again, this time longer. This isn't just about the victims, he said. This is about you, about the police. This is a performance. And you're the audience. Mitchell shook his head. This is all speculation. What's your evidence? Hayes opened his briefcase and pulled out an old file. Yellowed papers, handwritten notes. In 1995 at Quantico, we did a case study, he said. We were examining how serial killers position their victims. That student wrote a report. The title was Ritual Positioning and Audience Psychology. It described exactly these methods, placing bodies facing east, the 33-day cycle, a significant number in sacred geometry. Everything was in there. He placed the file on the table. And now, 27 years later, an exact copy of that report is playing out in Riverside, Oregon. Chief Pearson picked up the file and glanced through it. Her face went pale. Dr. Hayes, what is this person's name? Hayes shook his head. I can't say. Sealed file. But I can tell you this. That person should now be in their late 30s. High IQ. Probably has a career in psychology or sociology. Attractive, charismatic, excellent social skills. The exact opposite of what your profile says. Mitchell still wasn't convinced. So why now? Why after 27 years? Because there was a trigger, Hayes said. Maybe a loss, maybe a disappointment. Maybe he just decided it was time. But one thing is certain. This won't stop. 3, 6, 9, the numbers will increase. The 33-day cycles will continue. Detective Chen spoke up. If this is true, the next victim. September 22nd, Hayes said, 6 days from now. The room went silent as if frozen. Mitchell's head was spinning. On one hand, this old man's theory seemed crazy. On the other hand, it made sense. Too much sense. And even though he didn't want to admit it, his own profile that had gotten nowhere in 3 months had been completely useless. Okay, Mitchell said slowly. Let's say you're right. How do we find these two killers? There are over 30,000 people in Riverside. Hayes sat down and took a deep breath. First, drop the wrong leads. Don't look for someone who's isolated, socially withdrawn. Instead, look for someone popular, well-liked, trusted. Maybe a teacher, maybe a counselor, someone who's good with people. Second, he continued, find the partner. In these types of partnerships, there's always a leader and a follower. The leader is manipulative. The follower is young, impressionable, controlled by the leader. The age difference is probably around 10 years. And third, Hayes pointed at the board again, look at the geography. All 3 victims were found by the river, But that's not where they were killed. That's just the display site. You need to find the actual crime scene. Mitchell started taking notes. For the first time, he was really listening to this old man. So where could the real crime scene be? Chief Pearson asked. Hayes thought. An isolated place, quiet, but close to town. Maybe an old building, maybe a warehouse. A place where they can spend time, where no one can hear. Detective Chen pulled out her notebook. There are old factories in Riverside, by the river. They closed down in the 1980s. Start there, Hayes said. Mitchell stood up. He still wasn't completely convinced, but right now they had no other options. All right, he said. I'll send teams to the old factories. But Dr. Hayes, if this is a wrong lead— It's not wrong, Hayes said firmly. I know these people. I lived among them. I wandered in their minds for years. His eyes became cloudy, as if old memories were returning to him. And I lost one of them. I'll never lose another one again. The next 48 hours passed in chaos. Mitchell's team searched every old building, every abandoned structure in Riverside. Hayes set up a temporary office at the police department and reviewed old FBI files. Chief Pearson tried to keep the town calm by giving minimal information to the press. On the second night, at 2:30 a.m., Mitchell's phone rang. It was Detective Chen. We found something, she said, breathless. North side of the river, the old lumber mill. Inside. Ryan, you need to get here. Mitchell was there in 15 minutes. He'd brought Hayes with him. The inside of the mill was dark, damp, smelling of mold. But at the very back, in an old office section, there was a glowing blue light. When they entered, the walls were covered with photographs. Sarah Martinez, Emma Thompson, Jessica Park. But not just them. There were other women too, ones who hadn't been killed yet, potential victims. And on the wall, written in red marker, September 22nd. This is a staging area, Hayes said quietly. This is the planning room. He walked to a desk. There was a laptop on it, still open. They were here, recently. Mitchell checked around the computer. This could be a trap. No, Hayes said. This is a challenge. They're sending you a message. You found us, but you can't catch us. Detective Chen came in. There are footprints outside, fresh, 2 people. They left here about an hour ago. Mitchell's pulse quickened. Which direction? South, toward downtown. Hayes looked at the computer screen. The browser was open, a news website. Headline, Riverside Art Gallery opening tomorrow night. This, Hayes said. This is it. Mitchell didn't understand. The art gallery? Why? Because it's a show, Hayes said. It's all about this, the audience, the performance. Tomorrow night the gallery will be crowded, media will be there, and they'll be there, among the spectators, watching their own work. But they can't commit a murder, Chen said. Too many people. They won't commit a murder, Hayes said. They'll mark the next victim, or reveal themselves, or leave another message. He looked at the screen again. But they'll be there, I'm sure of it, Mitchell thought. Could they really take such a big risk? But there was no other idea. Okay, he said. I want every detective at the art gallery tomorrow, plain clothes. And Dr. Hayes, you're coming with us too. Hayes nodded. I was planning on it. The next evening, the Riverside Art Gallery was crowded. Well-dressed people, wine glasses, soft music, modern art pieces hanging on the walls. Mitchell and his team, 12 detectives, had blended into the crowd. Hayes stood quietly in a corner, his eyes scanning every face. What are we looking for? Mitchell asked through his earpiece. Hayes responded, his voice calm and concentrated. 2 people, probably together, one dominant, one passive. The dominant one looks around frequently, checking, controlling. The passive one looks at him, waiting for approval. It was 8:30 p.m. The gallery opened. Hundreds of people entered. Mitchell had been waiting for an hour. Nothing. Ordinary people, an ordinary night. Then Hayes's voice came through the earpiece. 3 o'clock position, 2 people, male and female. Male in his late 30s, female in her early 20s. Watch them. Mitchell looked carefully. A handsome man, dark suit, gray glasses. Next to him a young woman, simple black dress, calm but tense. The man stopped in front of a painting, the woman immediately waiting beside him. The man studied the painting, then whispered something to the woman. The woman nodded. That's them, Hayes said quietly. I'm sure. Mitchell approached, but not hastily. If he moved too fast, they could escape. Detective Chen approached from the other side. But just then, the man turned and looked directly into Mitchell's eyes, and smiled. Then he grabbed the woman's arm and walked quickly toward the exit. "They're running!" Mitchell shouted. The crowd panicked. People were screaming, running. Mitchell and Chen followed the man. They exited through the gallery's front door, spilling onto the street. The man and woman turned a corner, entering an alley. Mitchell was running. His breath was getting short, but he didn't stop. Chen was right behind him. In the alley, in the darkness, the man and woman hid behind a parking area. "Surrender!" Mitchell shouted, drawing his weapon. "FBI, get on the ground!" The man slowly stood up, hands raised, but he was still smiling. "Detective Mitchell," he said, his voice strangely calm. "You finally found me." "On the ground," Mitchell ordered. The man lay down. Chen handcuffed him. The woman was crying. "I didn't do anything. He forced me, please." But Mitchell wasn't listening to her. His eyes were on the man. "What's your name?" The man raised his head. "Dr. Marcus Brennan. I'm a psychology professor at Riverside Community College." His smile widened. "And I'm a former FBI student." Mitchell's heart pounded. Hayes was right, about everything. "Sarah Martinez, Emma Thompson, Jessica Park," Mitchell said. "Did you kill them?" Brennan nodded. "Not me. We." He looked at the woman. "Let me introduce you. Amanda Foster, my student, my aesthetic partner." "But don't worry, detective. Amanda only watched. I did the killing," Amanda screamed. No, he's lying. I didn't do anything." Mitchell handcuffed the woman too. "You're both under arrest." Police cars arrived. Brennan and Foster were taken away. Mitchell took a deep breath. It was over. Finally over. Hayes slowly walked into the street. There was no triumph on his face, only fatigue. "You did good work, detective," he said. Mitchell looked at him. "We couldn't have done it without you." Hayes shook his head. "I wish you could have. I wish this had never happened." "You knew him," Mitchell said. "Back then, at Quantico. What was he like?" Hayes was silent for a long time. Then he spoke. He was brilliant. Incredibly intelligent. But something inside him was broken. He could empathize, but couldn't feel. He wanted to become a killer himself to understand killers, and we, the FBI, taught him everything. His eyes welled up. "This is my fault, detective. I created him." Mitchell put his hand on Hayes' shoulder. "No, you didn't create him, but you stopped him. That's what matters." Hayes said nothing. He just looked into the night darkness, and Mitchell saw for the first time the weight on this old man's shoulders, the guilt he'd carried for 30 years. And finally, somewhat, his conscience lightening. The trial process lasted 6 months. Marcus Brennan was found guilty of 3 murders and received a life sentence. Amanda Foster cooperated and received a lighter sentence, 20 years with possibility of parole. Everything was found in Brennan's house, on his computer, in his planner. Plans, notes, even lists of future victims. The town of Riverside was in shock for a while, but gradually returned to normal. Detective Ryan Mitchell got promoted and became chief of the Riverside Police Department's Homicide Division. He always kept a small note on his desk. "Never trust your assumptions, never stop listening." And Dr. Robert Hayes returned to his home in Portland. He continued his retirement, but occasionally calls came from small-town police departments, difficult cases, unsolved murders, and Hayes every time picked up his old briefcase, put on that worn jacket, and went to help. Because some people can retire, but some duties never end. And Dr. Robert Hayes was a man who had hunted monsters for 30 years. He had aged, his hands trembled, his body was tired, but his mind was still a sharp sword, and that sword, once again, had cut through the darkness. A few months later, the Riverside Police Department held a small ceremony. They gave Dr. Robert Hayes an honorary badge. Mitchell gave a speech. "Dr. Hayes didn't teach us techniques. He didn't teach us profiling. He taught us one thing: humility, respecting experience, and most importantly, never judging a book by its cover." Hayes came to the podium. There was applause, but he only said a few words. "I just did what I had to do. You're the ones who are on the streets every day, taking risks, brave police officers. The honor is yours." And he sat down. His eyes were moist, but he was proud. After the ceremony, Mitchell caught him at the door. "Dr. Hayes," he said, "I have a question. That day, the first day, in the briefing room, did you think Brennan could be in our team? I mean, that one of the cops could be the killer?" Hayes stopped. He thought for a long time. Then he answered, "I always consider that possibility, detective, because the most dangerous monsters are the ones hiding behind uniforms." His eyes locked onto Mitchell's. But I looked at your team, and I saw only good people. Tired, ambitious, but good people. Mitchell felt relief. Thank you. Hayes smiled, a real smile. No, Detective, I should be the one thanking you for giving me a chance to correct my mistakes. And the old man, with his worn jacket, with his trembling hands, with slow steps, walked out of the police department. The sun was setting. The town of Riverside was settling down, and Dr. Robert Hayes, perhaps for the last time, felt peace inside. Because this time, he had saved a life. Maybe more. And perhaps, just perhaps, his 30-year conscience had lightened a little more. If Dr. Robert Hayes' story touched you, subscribe to Veterans Tales, like the video, share in the comments what this story reminded you of. Have you experienced something similar in your life? Share it with us in the comments. See you in the next story.